Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, May 6th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Big dollars, big decisions at issue. How to protect the public and pay and keep our police officers. That's the dilemma facing San Diego City leaders, and it's proving to be a contentious one, too. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen explains.
The city's pension fund has benefited from a strong stock market, and since pensions are part of the police budget, that means overall police spending would go down by about $9 million. At the same time, the mayor is budgeting for officer raises and 23 new civilian positions to enforce parking violations. The police chief says it takes too long for officers to respond to complaints of illegal parking.
We're not meeting the community expectation. Sometimes some of our backlog could be up to 45 days. This should drop that to about a week process. So I'm very grateful for those additional positions.
Overshadowing the budget hearing were recent attacks from the police officers union on Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp, whom they falsely accuse of trying to cut police funding. Montgomery Stepp is pushing for reforms to combat well-documented racial disparities in policing. And she says even in the face of criticism from the police union, she's not backing down.
We see disparate treatment. I live in black skin. I can't ignore it. I'm not going to ignore the statistics that tell us and give us an idea of the type of experience that, in particular, black people and black and brown people have in those interactions. Not going to ignore that.
The higher salaries proposed by Mayor Todd Gloria are meant to help retain more officers, as many leave San Diego for other departments. Montgomery Stepp made clear today she supports that. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
County leaders also wrestling with spending issues in its $7 billion budget plan. Among some of the proposals include big increases in mental health services. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says there's also a need to help the county's aging population.
The budget calls for an additional $71 million investment in mental health. The county wants to move away from a crisis response model to a preventative one, and local providers say the dollars are definitely needed.
We're seeing an enormous increase in the need, and we're talking the need from everything from children and youth all the way up through the older adult systems of care.
The local chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI San Diego, now works with up to 40,000 people per year.
Increase in the volume of our calls, increase in need for people finding resources, and increase in our support groups.
They have staff at local clinics and at the county's psychiatric hospital. NAMI also works with those experiencing substance abuse disorders.
Overdoses have increased dramatically across the country, but also particularly here in San Diego County. So we do have to acknowledge that we are in a crisis when it comes to our individuals who are losing their life due to addiction disorders, and they are also experiencing homelessness. That we have a heavy lift to start doing and getting those individuals wrapped around and into supportive services.
The proposed budget also includes additional money for serving the county's aging population. Officials want to add 60 new positions for in-home supportive services.
Well, one of the most disturbing trends that we're seeing relates to homelessness. We're seeing more and more homeless older adults that are coming through our doors.
Paul Downey is CEO of Serving Seniors. He'd like to see in-home supportive services extended to homeless shelters.
Many of the shelters have people who come in, seniors or even non-seniors, who can't meet their activities of daily living, ADLs. So this is things like being able to bathe themselves, dress themselves, go to the bathroom by themselves, and they're turned away. But those are exactly the kinds of things that in-home supportive services can do to assist.
The budget would add 100 new positions to help people secure life-saving benefits like CalFresh and Medi-Cal. Serving Seniors has more than doubled their meal distributions during the pandemic, on track to serve 1.5 million this year.
This food insecurity is a really big deal.
Public budget meetings are set to start later this month and continue into June. A final budget must be passed by June 30th. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
As we've been reporting, COVID cases are on the rise, and now county officials want to remind people to mask up at large events, including upcoming proms and graduations. Comic-Con is also advising event goers to mask up, be vaccinated, or show proof of a recent test. Also tonight, the FDA is putting strict limits on the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. More now from reporter Gloria Pazmino.
The Food and Drug Administration announced it's limiting the emergency use authorization of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. The FDA said the change is due to the risk of a rare but dangerous clotting condition known as TTS.
TTS stands for thrombosis with thrombocytopenia, which translates to clotting with low blood platelets. What we noticed about a year ago was that a relatively small number of people were developing unusual clots or clots in unusual places like the brain, often a week to 2 weeks after getting the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Only people 18 and older who cannot access other vaccines, are allergic to them, or those who would refuse to get vaccinated otherwise will be able to receive the Johnson & Johnson shot. Despite the new limitations, officials say the risk is extremely low.
We're talking about 1 in 2 million people ended up having a really horrible outcome. Again, 3 in a million getting any kind of a side effect on this, on terms of that TTS that we're tracking closely. So it's extremely rare.
Side effects typically show up 1 to 3 weeks after vaccination. Officials stressed those who have yet to be vaccinated against the virus have good alternatives.
The bottom line is there are other options. We have Moderna and Pfizer, both of which don't have this rare side effect.
Gloria Pazmino, KPBS News.
A proposal to allow children aged 12 and up to be vaccinated without their parents' consent is one step closer to becoming law in California. It cleared its first legislative committee yesterday. If approved, California would allow the youngest people of any state to be vaccinated without parental permission, including against the coronavirus. A new building officially opened in downtown San Diego today. These days, that's not news, but as KPBS reporter John Carroll shows us, the building at the corner of Park Boulevard and Market Street is something very unique.
Among San Diego's ever-increasing number of glittering glassy high-rises, there is this at the corner of Park and Market, 4 stories of infinite possibility. Voices of our city choir singing of a bright sunshiny day, a perfect musical metaphor for this place. It's UC San Diego leaving the confines of La Jolla, coming downtown to a new place, a new concept that goes far beyond what we typically think of as education.
It connects people to share ideas, to explore concepts, and to discover the not yet imagined.
Park and Market is part of UC San Diego in lots of ways. It is connected to the main campus by the Blue Line trolley just steps away. Of course, that same trolley also goes to the border, and that's also an important connection for Park and Market.
This building is dedicated to the notion of a cross-border relationship, of a deep intertwining with Baja California. We as a region are saying extremely clearly that we will bring the university to your community, or closer to community.
Park and Market is home to the UC San Diego Center for U.S.-Mexican Studies and an array of other organizations, including the Burnham Center for Cultural Advancement. It's also the new home of San Diego's Black Chamber of Commerce and the Digital Gym Cinema. More on that later in this newscast from our own cinema junkie, Beth Accomando. There are, of course, the kinds of things you'd expect to see in a university building, like the computer lab. But taken all together, Park and Market is designed to be so much more than the sum of its parts. A place where barriers of every sort are meant to be torn down, where ideas and inspiration turn into things that make this community better for all of us. The official opening of Park and Market is a weekend-long affair. It continues tomorrow with more live music, family activities, a free movie screening at the Digital Gym Cinema, and a book giveaway. From downtown, John Carroll, KPBS News.
School districts across the county are preparing for hundreds of new preschool students this fall. They will make up California's first universal transitional kindergarten class. KPBS education reporter MG Perez takes us to a classroom in Chula Vista.
You cut out, you glue it together.
Mrs. Bautista's kindergarten class at Halecrest Elementary is finishing a very important assignment. It's almost Mother's Day, and 6-year-old Amelia is creating a crown.
It's for my mom, and I just want to make her feel like special.
These students turned 5 years old in time to make it to kindergarten last September, but the state of California wants millions more students to begin their public education earlier when they are 4 years old. Amelia's classmate Finn says he's already very smart.
I could count all the way to 306 in preschool.
Since 2012, the state has funded transitional kindergarten, better known as TK, for children who turn 5 years old between September 2nd and December 2nd. Beginning this fall, the age cutoff date will be extended to February 2nd as the first stage in California's universal transitional kindergarten program. Halecrest is in the Chula Vista Elementary School District, which expects to add 300 new UTK students in the first year.
But we'll be adding additional months each year until 2025-26, where it'll be all 4-year-olds who turn 4 by September 1st will be allowed public education. It will become a whole new grade level.
As the largest elementary school district in the state, Chula Vista is a leader in strategies and curriculum. The district's UTK program will be a full-day schedule to increase the impact on students. Besides the Chula Vista Elementary School District, San Diego Unified started taking online applications this week for its UTK classes. Coronado Unified is still looking for public input before setting a UTK start date, and Oceanside Unified has begun registration.
They become more confident and independent, and they sort of become the leaders for the kiddos who didn't get that experience, and so they're the models, and it just makes it so much easier for everyone.
Meanwhile, Amelia has something to say about it.
My favorite thing to do is about school is spend time with my friends and learn new things, because learning new things can be fun.
Finn has finished his Mother's Day crown and knows exactly what he will tell his mom on Sunday.
I love you.
MG Perez, KPBS News.
Some hopeful news on the jobs front today. The U.S. government reports that employers added 428,000 jobs in April. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate held steady at 3.6%. The job growth and wage gains will help fuel consumer spending and likely keep the Federal Reserve on track to raise borrowing rates sharply to fight inflation. SDSU's Miro Kopik has more in the Friday Business Report.
So it's interesting where the sectors are. And when we look at California, for example, California as a state in March had a 4.9% unemployment rate, and we're a little bit behind on the total jobs regained. We're about 90% of our jobs regained. Most of those are in the leisure and hospitality sector, but San Diego has fared extraordinarily well. Our unemployment rate is 3.4%, better than the national average, and we've seen employment gains across the board. One of the things that that's unfortunate is between the Great Resignation and the number of jobs available. In March, there were 11.5 million jobs available. That would represent almost 1.9 jobs for every unemployed person in the country. That shows that, even if we go back to our labor force participation rate that we had before the pandemic, we would still be 7 to 8 million jobs shy. And that's all related to people either being on the sidelines, off the field, or not being allowed on the field.
Well, we are dealing with a big change this weekend locally. The wind is going to pick up a bit, especially some fire danger concerns into the mountains, but it's an onshore wind, and that is generally better news than an offshore wind. And with this onshore wind, we're going to have a significant cooling trend, especially by Sunday. But you'll notice a change in the air even on Saturday, cooler than today has been. All precipitation, though, with this next front is going to stay to the north. There is a cold front bringing some precipitation to parts of the Golden State, but not this far south. Tonight, we're going to get down to around 50 in Ramona, 61 in the city, Chula Vista down to 59 degrees, and Borrego Springs staying in the upper 60s. Saturday, here comes our front, and whenever a cold front drops in like this, the winds do pick up. It'll be a breezy and warm time. But again, the most dangerous wind for us is that offshore wind that leads to greater fire danger. This is an onshore wind that's going to bring at least some increase in the dew point. The relative humidity is not going to be terribly low. And that will also help those marine clouds, the coastal clouds. So again, fire danger a little greater farther east into the Four Corners region, but to some extent, even the mountains of eastern San Diego County will have some degree of fire danger just because of that wind. Borrego Springs, 98 degrees, still very steamy into the deserts of the far eastern part of the region into Sunday, but we will notice some changes locally in San Diego County. So watch as the temperatures drop here. Coastal areas, 71 Saturday, upper 60s Sunday and Monday. Morning clouds near the coast will give way to some afternoon sunshine, and we're pretty cool next week, 64 on Wednesday. Inland areas, here's a more pronounced change. 77 Saturday, but by Wednesday, only 63. That's downright cool for this time of the year. Mountainous areas, breezy, if not windy this weekend, and a big cooling trend. 48 for the high on Tuesday. And in the deserts, here's a significant drop too. 98 falling into the upper and even lower 70s by Wednesday afternoon. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
After a 30-year ban, lowriders are coming back to the South Bay. KPBS Peak City Heights reporter Jacob Ayer says the first cruise night in National City shows the pastime is about family.
Lowrider enthusiasts from across the region are excited to cruise down Highland Avenue in National City once again. Lowrider cruising will be allowed in National City on the first Friday of the month, now through October. It's part of a trial period. Tonight's cruise kicks off at Sweetwater High School, says Viejitos Car Club member Teresa Garza.
We heard there's people from LA, from San Jose, San Francisco, even El Paso, Texas, that they would be here. So let's see if they show up. We were told at first that we'll probably expect about 200 cars, 250, but now everybody thinks it's going to be like 500.
National City Mayor Alejandra Sotelo Solis is looking forward to seeing part of her town's Chicano culture come back to life.
Hey! With the Chicano Latino community, lowriding is kind of synonymous with milestones. You have them for your quinceañera, you have them at your wedding, you definitely, have them possibly for prom. And it's not only a rite of passage, but it's also, too, an investment of your blood, sweat, and tears.
From 6 to 9 p.m., lowriders will be able to cruise down Highland Avenue between 6th and 28th Streets. The event marks the first legal cruise in National City since 1992. Now, lowrider groups are aiming to shake their previous negative image and make cruises about family.
Because I wanted to be louder than the drugs, than the gangs, than the alcohol, than the streets. So I used lowriding to be that bigger voice to get my kids' attention and to keep it on me, to show them what hard work really does, to show them what unity is, and to show them how everybody in a community can become a family.
The National City Council voted in early April to allow the temporary period for lowrider cruise nights. Lowrider enthusiasts are hoping to make the cruise nights continue long-term after the trial period ends in October. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
San Diego has been getting a sneak preview of Top Gun Maverick this week. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh says the Navy is banking on the film striking gold twice for naval aviation.
So this is the engineering depot, the Fleet Readiness Center. So this is where airplanes come for major maintenance overhaul.
Captain Brian Ferguson is out at Naval Air Station North Island. The base with its row of F-18 fighters is as much a star of the new film as Tom Cruise. Ferguson has been a Navy pilot for 28 years. He was the Navy's technical advisor on the film and a fan of the original.
So my career essentially started in 1986 when I saw the first movie, and I said, I want to do that. I want to land on ships in a jet and go into combat.
I feel the need for speed.
So we went in right after college, when the original film was made. Top Gun, or U.S. Navy Strike Fighter Tactics Instructor Program, was in San Diego, when Miramar was a naval air station. The actual Top Gun moved to Fallon Naval Air Station back in the 1990s, but the filmmakers wanted to keep the new movie set in San Diego. Ferguson breaks it down.
So Top Gun is acknowledged universally to be Naval Air Station Fallon, Nevada. They bring all these best of the best of the best in the storyline down to San Diego to train here. Would we do that? No, we wouldn't. We would train in Fallon. But to get the beaches, there's better beaches here than in the deserts of Nevada. So there was a little bit of artistic license there, and it doesn't bother me at all.
There was a huge lag time from when filmmakers were actually filming in and around San Diego and the premiere this week.
We started filming October of 2018, I think. So 4 years ago, COVID put a bit of a pause on it.
The original film was a recruiting boon for the Navy. This time around, the Navy went all out. It opened its doors to Paramount, providing F-18s and pilots. The filmmakers were allowed to shoot on the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Roosevelt, which were both based in San Diego at the time. Here's Ferguson.
We started filming here along the runway using a Fleet Readiness Center airplane, and then we moved on to various shooting locations to include 2 aircraft carriers, 5 bases, studios, Los Angeles.
When the filmmakers decided the real fighter pilot bars were too small, the Navy let them build one on base at North Island.
They loved them, but they weren't big enough to put cameras in and back out and get the angles they wanted. So being movie makers, they just built an entire huge complex on the beach at Breakers Beach.
Ferguson insists the Navy build the studios for everything.
This one's just in the hangar, getting some maintenance done on it right now. So we do aviation tours.
Earl Wetterbrook is a retired Marine colonel. He's now a pilot at San Diego Sky Tours. I caught up with him for a Zoom interview in the company's hangar before he was about to fly. At the time the first movie came out, he was stationed in Yuma, Arizona.
With the Marine Aviation Weapons and Tactics Squadron, it's kind of the Marine version of Top Gun, if you will. And I knew a lot of the guys that flew in the first movie. Of course, we gave them a ration of a hard time.
Wetterbrook says he saw the surge in interest back in 1986 with his own eyes, just going out to the bar at Miramar at the time. He says it's hard to imagine the new film having the same impact.
At the time, I mean, it was kind of the Cold War. There wasn't much going on. A lot of patrols. There was no combat. The thing's going to be interesting now is we've just gone through 30 years of essentially continuous combat in the Mideast. The audience is going to be a little different. I think they're going to look at it a little different.
People watching this movie are now much more aware of the reality of war. Still, the Navy is banking on Maverick to boost the image of naval aviation one last time. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Digital Gym Cinema is reopening this weekend at the new UC San Diego at Park and Market building. KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando says filmgoers can choose between 2 very different films.
Memoria begins with a sound that wakes a woman named Jessica and then consumes her.
It's like a rumble from the core of the earth.
Jessica, played to quiet, intense perfection by Tilda Swinton, sets off on a journey to discover what the sound means, why it obsesses her, and if other people hear it too. The film revels in long, static shots, and silence is broken by carefully orchestrated sound design. It's a film that asks you to surrender to its contemplative curiosity. For programmer Moises Esparza, it's a film that perfectly sums up the kind of challenging and exciting filmmaking that Digital Gym Cinema wants to provide.
I'm all about just looking for cinema that I think will not only speak to cinephiles, but also to the San Diego community at large. But I do think that programmers, at least here locally, have to push to expand the public's definition of what cinema means.
The fact that Memoria opens the same weekend as Marvel's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness highlights in bold detail the contrast that Digital Gym Cinema wants to offer. It's not that one type of film is better than another, but rather that filmgoers deserve diversity and choice.
There's no box office battle between the Digital Gym Cinema and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We are totally operating on a different field, but I think Memoria in itself is maybe opening up the possibilities of other multiverses that exist within more independent film, I think. Definitely boundary pushing, definitely a film that's contemplative and that is really, a gift to people who love deciphering cinema and who love thinking about it afterwards.
So push your boundaries and your definition of film by stepping into the new Digital Gym Cinema at Park and Market and experiencing Memoria. And speaking of Doctor Strange, Marvel is everywhere at the moment. Its cable series Moon Knight is wrapping up, just as its latest feature film, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, is opening. As a lifelong fan of director Sam Raimi, it pains me to say that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a disappointment. Raimi helped usher in the current wave of superhero films with Spider-Man in 2002. But here, he's burdened with a complicated but not clever script.
What do you know about the multiverse?
Answering that question requires a lot of exposition and a numbing amount of computer-generated eye candy. But that leaves little room for Raimi to display any personal flair, even though the story leans into his talent of horror. Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch is the only character of interest.
That doesn't seem fair.
But all in all, this multiverse is a mess. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.